All right, we're rolling on cream of tomato soup. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, and I hear this from time to time when I teach people how to make this, or they have choices of different soups that they're going to make, and this is on the list. This is the sleeper. This is the hidden cream of tomato soup that wipes people out. They just love this soup. And I would say probably best characterize this by saying there's cream of tomato soup and then there's cream of tomato soup. The cream of tomato soup over here that we're used to, that comes in a can, is not like this at all. This is very, very special soup and has a lot of very special ingredients in it. And I'm about to walk you through that process right now. First, we have some rendered bacon, which is what we're going to cook the primary veg to begin with in, and the bacon fat right here. In accordance to the prescription in the ingredient list, we'll add the bacon. We will add the onions. We will add the celery. We will add the mushroom. We will add the dried basil, dried oregano. You can use fresh if you want. Dried works just fine with this. This soup will be pureed later. All these ingredients are going to become smooth, and then we're going to put garnish in the soup. We have, instead of tomato paste, which is what the recipe calls for, I'm going to show you how to touch it up with tomato concasse, which you also have the formula for. And the dried oregano. And in this case, I think we're going to use a little bit of butter because there's not enough bacon fat to satisfy the sauteing needs of all these veg. So we're going to give that a little mix. And we're going to give you a time-elapsed progress report on this in about 5 minutes. We're going to be sauteing the veg, and I'll be back in 5 minutes in real time to complete this process, which is going to include adding garlic, adding white wine, reducing it, adding the tomato, adding a little bit of stock, bringing it to a simmer. This particular soup, with the ingredients that we have in it, shouldn't need a thickening agent specifically added to it to thicken it. If it does, we'll add it at the end, if we think it does, okay? So we'll be right back in a few minutes as this sautés, okay? All right, we're rolling back on the cream of tomato soup. About 7 minutes has elapsed since I said goodbye a minute ago. And let me show you what we got here. We've got sauteed onion, mushroom, celery, with a little bit of dried oregano, dried basil, with bacon and bacon fat and a little bit of the butter, okay? This soup already sounds good, doesn't it? Now you're wondering, how is this cream of tomato soup? This is how, okay? First, we're going to add some fennel seeds to the soup. It'll give it that slight licorice flavor. You'll notice that in your ingredient list, I have Pernod, which is French anisette, if you will, listed as a flavoring option at the end during the finishing process. We're not going to use any of it today, but it's certainly an option. But you don't need it. This soup is great without it. All right, we got enough fennel seeds in there. And now we're going to put the garlic in there. And then we're going to pour the white wine on there, and we're going to reduce it. We're going to time-elapse that for you for a moment. Garlic. Again, this soup can absorb more garlic than a lot of other soups can. Some soups can't absorb very much garlic at all, and you got to be careful how much you put in. This cream of tomato has a little bit of liberal elbow room for the cook in it, okay, without it being overdone on the garlic. So we'll put a pinch more in there. Being careful not to burn the garlic, just cooking it briefly for a second, and then we're going to add the white wine to it. You burn that garlic, it permeates the whole soup with burnt garlic. It, in my opinion, ruins the soup, okay? So now we're going to hit it with the white wine. Got a couple of cups on there. And we're going to time-elapse that for a couple of minutes, and that's going to reduce down. And I'll be right back in about 3-4 minutes while that reduces by 75%. Then we'll add the tomatoes, a little bit of stock, and then we're going to time-elapse the shoot again for about 10, 15, 20 more minutes while the soup cooks and becomes tender enough to puree, okay? But for right now, let's let the wine reduce for about 5 to 8 minutes, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. About 7 minutes has elapsed, and the wine has reduced. As you can see, it has a very small amount of liquid now in this pan, which we started with, which was bacon fat and celery and onions and a little bit of dried oregano and dried basil. And we put a little bit of butter in there to supplement the amount of bacon fat that we had. Now that the wine's reduced, we're going to add the canned diced tomatoes, which was the choice I made for this demonstration, versus the fresh. And, oh, we'll we'll just put them all in there. And we're going to add a little bit of stock to this. Keeping in mind that there's a lot of juice from the tomatoes. And I have some tomato juice set aside, which we may use as a way of thinning it out if it's a little too thick later. But I think, as a matter of fact, give me some of that tomato juice now, Louis. We're going to add some, because there really isn't even enough liquid in here now. We're going to add some tomato juice to it now. Then we're going to time elapse this. We're going to let it simmer for about 20 or 30 minutes. Now I want to show you the thickness level here of soup to, I should say, liquid to food. As you can see here, it's kind of juicy. That's good. Now we're going to let this simmer again, like I said, for about a half an hour. I'm going to be back in a half an hour, and I'll let you know exactly how long it took. And at that point, we're going to puree it, butter it, cream it, finish it, garnish it, and put it in a bowl. So we'll be back in about 30 minutes to finish off this great cream of tomato soup. We're back with the completion of the cream of tomato soup. And we sauteed the onions and celery with the fennel seeds and garlic. And we reduced some white wine over it. We had bacon and mushrooms in there. And then we added tomatoes and a little bit of stock. And we've been cooking it for about a half an hour, which is all it takes. Because there's not that much food in here that's hard enough that isn't already ready to puree. So it wasn't like we were cooking beans or potatoes or something. So this is soft and ready to puree. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with it right now. We're going to put it in a container that's a little bit more, I need a ladle is what I need, a little more conducive to pureeing it, because trying to puree it in a pot like this is too hard. You don't get enough turbulence the way you need it. Thank you, sir. Which will kind of make the pureeing process a little faster and smoother. Keeping in mind, you know, things puree faster when they're hot than when they're not hot, too. Okay. I think we'll be able to finish this soup right here in this pot. So let's give it a zap and start that process. And unfortunately, I can't really talk to you when I'm doing this because it's too noisy. Give me the sausage. We are going to add a little bit of sausage and some tomato concasse, cream and butter to this soup. Thank you. Now the texture of this soup is fairly close to where it needs to be already. You see that? That's nice. Now we added no specific thickening agent to this for the reason of making it thick. There's something about the tomatoes, onions, and celery and the amount of liquid we had proportionally to that that made this puree the right texture. And we normally I do not prescribe a thickening agent for this particular soup formula. Now I'm going to add a little bit of soft butter to this, which traditionally would be in the proportion of 2 ounces of whole unsalted butter per quart. We got a couple of quarts of soup here, so we add about 4 ounces of butter to it. And we're going to need the fresh basil over here. And another saute pan. Okay, that looks good. Let's give that a taste. Thank you, sir. Now I have the cream reducing over here. As you see, I have a couple of cups here. And we'll add that to it also. Where's my spoon? And let's give that a zap.